This is Brighter Morning with Bo, and I am Bo Tiwari, your host, and we will talk now to Tracy Davidson Celestine, the political leader of the PNM in Tobago, engaged in a very, very, heated contest for the House of Assembly elections due on December 6th, and we will talk to her now. Good morning. How are you, Ms. Davidson Celestine?
I am doing well, How are you?
I'm good. Well, first of all, let me thank you for coming on the program. I want to get the technical people here to lift your volume a little bit so people can hear you clearly. And
all right.
We're going to have a conversation this morning about what's happening. How is the campaign shaping up from your point of view?
Well, the campaign is shaping up very well, All teams are mobilized and in the respective communities, of course, knocking on every door and asking Tobagonians for their support in the process. The People's National Movement is, of course, very well organized. We have 15 excellent candidates in this election, and so they're receiving very good support from the people. And, of course, they're there knocking on the doors and asking Tobagonians for their support because, of course, the People's National Movement has delivered for the people of Tobago over the last 20 years, and we are campaigning based on our track record of performance and where we intend to take Tobago post-2021.
All right, we'll explore some of those areas. We'll interrogate some of those areas. But before we do, you have 15 electoral districts in Tobago, but how many communities do you have?
I think we have in the vicinity about 48 to 50 communities, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the last count when I was in the Division of Community Development and Culture. 15 electoral districts now mean that we have smaller boundaries and a smaller number of persons that we will treat with as assemblymen going forward. And that, of course, would mean a more intimate and knowledgeable relationship with our people in those electoral districts.
How many workers do you have in the House of Assembly now, and what do you know what proportion of that? What is the proportion of the number of workers you have in the House of Assembly to the workforce in Tobago? You have any idea?
Well, I think the last count, which might have been in 2020, we had approximately 21,700 employees with the Tobago House of Assembly, and that would be a combination of both daily paid and, of course, contracted workers.
Okay.
And that represents about 60%, if I'm not mistaken, of the workforce.
Okay. Well, now you have been on the campaign trail. We had some clips here in the news in which you basically are saying that you're going to create 3,000 more jobs, and that you in Tobago over 4 years. And I wonder, those 3,000 jobs that you are going to create are in addition to these 21,000 jobs in the House of Assembly, or do you plan some kind of shift in order, as you create those jobs, to have people move over to different areas?
Well, the thing is, what we are talking about is creating additional jobs because, of course, every year persons will leave secondary school or even the university, and so we have to be in a position to help to create opportunities so that they can be employed and, of course, move forth to living a meaningful life. And so for us, in our manifesto and in our plans going forward, we're talking about 3,000 additional jobs created not only within the Tobago House of Assembly, but with the support of the private sector as well. If you would have listened to the discussions, as you would have said, there are quite a number of opportunities that will come to Tobago over the next year or so. And we can start off with our foreign direct investment, where there will be an injection of 300 rooms rather, that will create opportunities for those who would want to apply their trade in the tourism sector. I spoke to the fact that, we'll be creating a division of information and technology that, of course, will add to creation of employment as well, particularly for those who are in the web programming and IT development field. And then, of course, we will be pushing agriculture as much as is possible and providing the capital so that we can have more entrepreneurs on the island. And of course, with the hotel development and other development coming to Tobago, you would find that that will also add to the employment and add to the creation of employment on the island. So there is a comprehensive plan of action that will be implemented approximately 6 months after taking office so that we can go forth to the business of creating employment for the people of Tobago.
Okay, you say that you're going to do some of this in partnership with the private sector, and you're going to add to the number of jobs in the House of Assembly. So you're talking in all about 24,000 working people beyond the House of Assembly. I know you have people involved in the private sector now on the island, but what kind of partnerships have you built with the private sector before in the House of Assembly that have worked well?
Well, the thing is, with the private sector, we have always maintained open and honest communication with them, and that goes a long way in developing relationships. One of the things you would find is that we have a tendency to be very responsive to the needs of the private sector. And so when they are demanding, try to find ways and means to treat with demand, starting off in the first instance with providing financial support for training and ensuring that our private sector has the necessary or is equipped with the necessary skills to manage their businesses in a very successful way. And so over the last 2-3 years or so, we have granted them in the vicinity of about $400,000 or so that their membership can be trained. In addition to that, we have been able to build some of the things that would help the private sector to thrive. Issues having to do with the ferry, because of course, they transport quite a lot of goods between Trinidad and Tobago. We have been successfully able to address those ferry challenges. And more than that, we have been providing financial support outside of financial support for training and capacity building. Within the Division of Community Development and Culture, we have set aside over $40 million over the last 4 years or so to ensure that we can provide the startup capital, that we can provide loans, that we can hold the private sector hand in terms of moving them forward. So we have had a very open and honest relationship. Of course, there are many times when the Tobago House of Assembly is criticized by the private sector, but by and large, we are about ensuring that we create an environment where the private sector can thrive. Very recently, as an example, with the COVID-19 and the challenges arising from COVID, the Tobago House of Assembly in concert with the central government have provided $100 million in support for the tourism sector as well. $50 million was spent in the last fiscal period to upgrade their property, and another $50 million will be spent in this fiscal period to assist them with payroll and those kind of services, of course, in an effort to ensure that the private sector thrives. So we have been providing room stock upgrade, we have been providing the finances, we have been ensuring that we have improvements in transportation so that they can move services readily between Trinidad and Tobago, and we have been working with them to build their capacity.
So the first $50 million allocated in 2020, I believe, that has been disbursed, and you can see the results of that now in terms of upgrading of plant in the local and community hospitality sector.
Yes, the focus has been for the last year or so since the shutdown and ensuring that our plants are up to standard. Of course, you would know that one of the key sellers for destination is, of course, their product offering. And product offering here would mean that your plant is up to the kind of standard both internationally and even locally. And so there has been that kind of investment in throughout the tourism sector on the island and the resultant upgrade to the properties.
What will you do in the House of Assembly? Let's say you win the elections. What will you do in the House of Assembly now that you haven't done before?
Well, the thing for me is about working more closely with the private sector. For me, my vision is to ensure that we have a self-sustaining Tobago, well diversified Tobago as a matter of fact, and to ensure that the private sector leads that kind of arrangement going forward. Since the time that the People's National Movement has been in office, yes, we have been focused on improving and increasing the standard of living and the quality of life for people. And we have been focusing on ensuring that the public arm, which is the Tobago House of Assembly, can set that foundation from which all of us can thrive. But we now need to take the development to another level where we focus on creating that catalyst where we can have more businesses, where we can have more entrepreneurship, and most importantly, where we can have more creativity and even innovation. And so we are focusing on PPPs, that would be public-private partnership arrangements. We are focusing on attracting foreign direct investment. We are focusing on creation of foreign a marketing arm that would cause more financial investment, foreign direct investment rather, to come to Tobago. And we are about ensuring that we have that self-sustaining arrangement and a well-diversified arrangement for Tobago.
Is it that you want to see less dependency on the House of Assembly as an employer and as a major player in Tobago, and you want to see greater involvement and a greater thrust of the private sector in Tobago? Is that what you want to see, a slight shift in responsibility, contribution, obligation?
Well, what I want to see is creation of opportunities for people. So whether it be opportunities within the Tobago House of Assembly or opportunities within the private sector, we would want to know that those opportunities exist. I think one of the things we have experienced over the last 20 years or so is a brain drain kind of arrangement where some of our educated persons have left the island, probably migrated to Trinidad, up the Caribbean, or even they have sought jobs in the international market. We want to be in a position to retain all those persons who are well qualified to make a contribution to the island. And so sometimes you may not readily find the jobs within the Tobago House of Assembly, but they can, if we create that environment, be found within the private sector where the contribution can be made in a direct way. So for us is ensuring that there is a balance. The public sector is striving, but at the same time that the private sector is striving as well, so that there are opportunities for those who would want to take up or capitalize on the opportunities.
What would you say? What would you identify as the biggest achievement of the last full term of the PNM in the House of Assembly for Tobago? What would you say is the most significant achievement?
Well, the thing is, it's how to choose at this point. Because the People's National Movement has done so much for the people on this island. And, I would put it in maybe one sentence, and it's how we would have worked to improve the quality of life of our people, and most importantly, the standard of living for our people. When you look at the quality of the homes, when you look at the human development um, indexes or rates on the island, when you look at the kind of infrastructure that we have been able to construct, the People's National Movement has done quite a lot. And so I can't really pick out any one greatest achievement because there are so many.
All right, but why do you, how has it been for you to function in a situation in which you do not have majority control of the House of Assembly in these last 6 months or so? Has it been, it's more than 6 months, right? It's about 8
It
months.
is.
Yeah.
It's about 8 months thereabout. I think the only thing that has been missing, the only element that has been missing from this arrangement is the fact that we have not been able to have debates in the Assembly legislature. We're not legislators at the end of the day, we're not able to create laws, but we have missed opportunities to debate in the parliament, not the parliament, the plenary, the assembly legislature, and to make people even more aware of some of the programs, and most importantly, to get the input of the minority side or the opposition side in terms of some of our programs and our plans of action going forward. So that's the only element that has been missed from this arrangement, the 6-6 pass. Of course, you know, the Chief Secretary took the decision that we will not engage in any new and significant projects until the time that we have been able to treat with the stalemate. But by and large, work has been ongoing in the Tobago House of Assembly. People continue to be employed, they are paid, and those projects that we had approved before the last election, we are very focused on ensuring that we can deliver those projects to the people of Tobago.
Now, when I asked you about the most significant contribution in the last 4-year term, you said that the PNM has made so many contributions to Tobago that it has been quite significant and therefore very difficult to choose one thing. But in the last elections, you were not able to win a majority and you had a loss. What is it that you have been able to do, you think, between January and now that would re-earn the trust of the population of Tobago?
I think, I'm not so sure whether I can say Dr. Bo Tawari or Bo Tawari
Let's say
in
Bo.
this,
Bo is fine.
in this instance. But of course, but of course, you know, I think it really has to do with communication in large part and reminding our people about the gains that have been made under People's National Movement administration, and so we have been talking to them about the improvement in the quality of life. I think one of the things is that we have really a short memory, and we recognize that we have to constantly remind the people of how comfortable they are in this very small island called Tobago, and so we have been doing that. More so, we have been finalizing some of those projects that we have on the drawing board and on the table, and we have been listening to our people and ensuring that we reconnect with them in areas where we might have lost that touch that we once had. Apart from that, we also had one or two challenges in one or two electoral districts with our candidates. And so we have improved on that kind of selection process coming out from the screening arrangement of the People's National Movement. And in large part, though, Dr. Tawari, we are ready to go. And we are out there with our people, we are talking to them. And of course, we are putting forward or exciting and new plans for 2022 and beyond.
All right. Is there democracy in Tobago now, and how can that democracy be deepened? Because that has also been a kind of undercurrent of the discussion. Yeah.
Well, I cannot remember a time that democracy has not been present in Tobago. As a matter of fact, if you are talking about the Tobago House of Assembly, for instance, we have at all levels consulted with the people within the respective electoral district, within these different sectors, forgive me, within the different sectors, so to speak. Democracy is alive and well. We recently had the Tobago House of Assembly elections where we would have gone to the polls that resulted in a 6-6 tie arrangement. And the People's National Movement has always said that the best arrangement to break that tie is, in fact, to go back to the polls. And again, we're going back to the polls and asking people for their respective support. I don't know that we can be more democratic than that.
Yeah, I think in the deepening, it is the, you mentioned there about 44 communities and the consultation process involving the communities becomes important. I'm going to have to take a break now. If you don't mind, I'll call you Tracy. Is that okay?
Yeah, that is okay.
We're going to take a break now for commercial, but when I come back, I'm going to ask you I know you plan to give out some lands. I want to ask what you see as the ultimate outcome of that. And I would ask you a couple of questions about development of Tobago by the House of Assembly. Okay? So we take a break now for commercial purposes. And this is Brighter Morning with Bo. I'm Bo Tiwari. I'm talking to Ms. Tracy Davidson Celestine. And we are talking about the House of Assembly elections in Tobago on December 6th. This is Brighter Morning with Bo. We see you in a minute.
Welcome to Lifetime Solutions, where you can trust your roof to us. Our services include custom fabrication, steel framing, roofing installation, on-site roll forming, roofing maintenance and services. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com. Lifetime Solutions. You can trust your roof to us. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com.
As businesses adapt to the new normal, let Magic Mist take care of your cleaning and sanitization needs with our COVID-19 BSCAI internationally certified technicians. With over 43 years of protecting the health of our nation, you can trust us to ensure your building remains safe, healthy, and functional. Give us a call today at 638-6675 or 332-5522. Magic Mist Services Limited, your total facilities management solutions provider.
Welcome back to Brighter Morning with Bo. I am Bo Tiwari, and you are watching MCTV, Multicultural TV in Trinidad and Tobago and the entire Caribbean region. And we are talking with Ms. Tracy Davidson Celestine, who is the political leader of the People's National Movement in Tobago and a candidate in the THA elections on December 6th. Now, I asked you the question. You said that you would give out some lands. I heard a statement from you yesterday in Tobago. What is the ultimate goal that you are seeking to achieve there?
Well, the ultimate goal at the end of the day is to ensure that we can improve the standard of living and the quality of life of our people. And in that, we have to find ways and means within which we can affect that goal to improve the standard of living and, of course, the quality of life. Of course, the people in Tobago hold land very in high regard. One of the things is we have not really built houses in Tobago at the rate that they would build houses in Trinidad. But if you go back to look at the success stories where that kind of arrangement is concerned, whether you have the option between the provision of land or the construction of homes, you would recognize that the most successful out of the models was where the Tobago House of Assembly, then whether it be under this administration or successive administration, the most successful arrangement was where when the citizens were given land, we saw construction of homes happening within a relatively short period of time. And so we are about ensuring that we can bring back that model to life, so to speak. When you look at what had transpired has transpired in areas like Signal Hill and even in Susulands, you would recognize that there are some success factors coming out of the Tobago House of Assembly facilitating a land arrangement process as opposed to land and construction of homes. Because at the end of the day, we recognize that there are people who also want to determine how their houses look, the type of houses. They basically want a customized approach. And so we are about facilitating that. But at the end of the day, ensuring that our bigger goal is to improve the standard of living and quality of life of our people.
All right. You must have plans for economic development of Tobago. What would be, if you had to name 3 priorities for development in Tobago over the next 4 years, what would those priorities be and what difference would they make? Economic priorities.
Well, our priorities would have to be in the form of how we can diversify Tobago in the sense of ensuring that we have a more self-sustaining Tobago. And with diversification, there are some areas, some pillars that we have to tap into. I think one has to do with public-private partnership investment strategy that would see a greater collaboration between the public sector and the private sector. And in that, you could have an approach that treats with foreign direct investment strategies as well. And so for me going forward, in terms of some of those economic development priorities, is to ensure that we have that vehicle that could attract more private sector support and funding, redounding in more projects and, of course, employment for the people of Tobago, and ensuring in that process that we can have more greater contribution of foreign direct investment into Tobago, and there would be benefits to be had from that arrangement. I would also focus on how we could expand agriculture. We've been talking about food security for some time now, and so for me, it's about ensuring that we create upstream and downstream industries where agriculture is concerned. We have persons on this island who are very keen, very interested in farming. As a matter of fact, in the Tobago House of Assembly at this point, we are in discussion with farmers to ensure that we can create, we can make land available so that they can plant. We have on the cards now over 300 acres of land to be distributed. We have invested in access road development. We have invested in wells so that persons who are interested in farming can obtain water. But when they produce, what do we do with that? And so we have to look now at creating other avenues, which would be agro-processing, where you take the raw materials and you create flour. For instance, you know, Tobago has been talking about the blue food for quite some time, but we have not really gone further into creating opportunities for that blue food, blue food arrangement. And so out of that whole agro-processing arrangement, we can maybe have a Tobago brand of flour from the dasheen or the blue food as we know it. So it is working to ensure that we can create those avenues, public-private partnerships, foreign direct investment, treating with opening up agriculture in a way that is more sustainable and is more economically viable for the people of Tobago, and of course ensuring that we educate, because human development must be taken into consideration when you're talking about economic drivers. It's how we work with the residents on the island to ensure that they are educated in relation to the kind of industries that we'd want to create. So we have been also talking about creating animation and treating with the environment, and most importantly, ensuring that our people are healthy by providing scholarships for those who would want to take up specialist medical doctor programs. So those would be some of the economic priorities going forward. And those would, of course, create and open up employment opportunities for our people.
Now, you know, islands like Bermuda and the Cayman Islands, they are very economically well off. You have per capita income there of 60,000 US, 80,000 US. Why can't Tobago sort of really leap off the block? And how would you make that possible?
Well, Tobago can leap off the block. Tobago can make a greater contribution to national development and even regional development. It's about how we organize our people. It's about how we are successfully able to work with the private sector. It's about how we are able to create the kind of incentives for the private sector to thrive. And most importantly, it's about how we can treat with the whole legislative framework that will cause us to create that enabling environment within which our private sector can thrive as well. And so there is a framework that we have to build out in order for Tobago to get to the level of other Caribbean countries or other countries of the region. The thing with countries like Bermuda and maybe St. Lucia, they basically set the manner in which they ought to thrive. In Tobago, we have the challenge with the whole Tobago autonomy arrangement and not being in a position to develop our own framework in the kind of way that we would want to develop it. So it is something that we have to be able to treat with going forward. But at the end of the day, once as we have that framework in place, once as we are able to treat with the legislative authority, we can have all of those incentives, we can create the catalyst in which our people can thrive, or which the island can thrive, just as other countries. And then with the creation of industries, talking about animation industries, talking about, of course, more foreign direct investment, we could get to that level as well.
All right. I'm going to close with a final question because we're coming to the end now. We have to break for the news. And again, I want to thank you for agreeing to be a guest and for answering the questions, all of them, in a very straightforward way. And I want you to tell me something. We've just had COP26. Tell me something about climate change and Tobago. and what is your view of what is happening in Tobago and what must be done?
Well, we have seen the impact of climate change here in Tobago, and we have seen it and felt it and have been feeling it for quite some time now. We are experiencing coastal erosion in many different areas. We have seen mass coral bleaching. And of course, we have been experiencing flooding in many instances, especially in Scarborough, and more recently in some of those rural areas on the island. And we have seen the irregular weather patterns as well. I think this year was one of the rainiest in quite a long time. But our approach has been a very progressive one. As a matter of fact, it has started with us recognizing the importance of managing and the environment in a particular way. And within the Tobago House of Assembly, we have a department of environment and even natural resources. We have been working with the private sector to treat with the whole issue of recycling. I think it was sometime last year. There is a company that we provided support to treat with the whole issue of ensuring that we can treat with those plastic bottles once and for all within the respective communities. And that is, of course, given support by the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development, where we have created since an litter eradication team that works hand in hand with that private sector representative. We have been pushing things in tourism like Blue Flag certification. Very recently, we had some kind of recognition from UNESCO where we made quite a lot of noise about man and the biosphere. And quite speaking, we have been working hand in hand with Environment Tobago so that we can implement some of the initiatives that will make an impact eventually in terms of caring for the environment. But of course, that requires a collaborative and a global effort, because I listened to you in terms of some of the expressions you made earlier. And so whatever happens in countries like Brazil or even the United States of America, we would of course feel the effect here. So although we are playing our part, although we are rolling out programs here, it really requires an international, a national, and a region and a worldwide effort to treat with COVID. And I'm really happy that there were strides made at the last environmental conference, and we saw even our Prime Minister leading the charge, as well as Mia Motley making very bold, frank and honest statements in terms of the kind of efforts that we need globally to impact the environment.
Okay, final question, a quick answer. You think there will be a spike in COVID cases after the election campaign is over?
Well, we hope not. In the last Tobago House of Assembly election, there was no evidence of any spike, and that would have been in January of this year, and we're hoping for the same. And so my plea is to encourage persons to follow all of the rules and the regulations. Of course, we have about 14 to 15 recorded positive Delta cases here in Tobago, but those are only the ones that we have captured. There is a strong possibility that there can be more within the district. So we caution persons to be vigilant and more so to be very conscious as to what is happening around. We have been talking to our candidates as well. All of them are fully vaccinated at this time, and we have been talking about them in terms of how to interact with residents as they seek that support, and even our supporters as well. If you would recognize, our crowds are now smaller, and that is, of course, very deliberate, and that our meetings, the public meetings, we have adequate spacing, and more so, we have temperature checks, we have sanitization. So we are working to ensure all of those protocols are in place.
All right. I want to thank you very much, Tracy, Davidson, Celestine, for a candid interview this morning. I thank you for appearing on Brighter Morning with Bo, and we will monitor what's happening in Tobago, and we may talk to you again before the elections are held. Thank you very much for being with us. This is Brighter Morning with Bo. Thank you for watching MCTV, Multicultural TV in Trinidad and Tobago and the region. And we close now Brighter Morning with Bo. I am your host, Bo Tiwari. See you tomorrow. We break for the news now with Andrew Chan.